to welcome everybody to this session of the African Food Systems Forum 2023. This session is, as indicated in your program, Parliamentary and Policymakers Forum, creating an enabling environment for private sector investments and trade. I'm a little biased, but I think this is easily the most important session of the African Food Systems Forum, for the sole reason that the relationship between bureaucrats, technocrats, the executive, and members of parliament is perhaps the most important one. The relationship between bureaucrats and members of parliament is perhaps the most important determinant of how well a country transitions from policy development to policy execution. And so it's an important conversation that's really key to how our economies and our countries manage and drive food systems transformation. So members of parliament are key players in the development and growth of any country, and they are in charge of budgetary, legislative, and accountability functions. And they have a strong voice. They are elected by the people. Yeah? And so we would like to really encourage everyone to, pay maximum attention to these discussions. We'd like this to be a very open discussion. And we would encourage very frank, pointed, candid conversations about what needs to change, what needs to improve, so that our policymakers, our parliamentarians, our leaders can work for us. So to get us started, we're going to have our keynote speaker, His Excellency Dr. Jakaya Kikwete, former President of the United Republic of Tanzania, share with us his thoughts. And as he comes on stage, please let's give a round of applause. You're welcome, sir. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Excellencies, and members of parliament, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. At the onset of 2022, we thought we were on a trajectory for a full recovery and transformation of Africa's food systems. The COVID-19 pandemic, extreme weather events, emerging pests and diseases, and food price inflation had thrown us off our feet. Nonetheless, before we knew it, we were thrown into another disruption by the Russia-Ukraine war, which has had negative impact on our continent's food and nutrition security. These negative events have happened while the continent continues to grapple with other challenges such as surging population growth, regional and international conflicts which are impacting Africa's ability to transform its food systems. The number of hungry people in the continent continues to grow by the day. Worse enough, some of these catastrophes are not of our making. For example, Africa is gravely affected by the impact of climate change, despite contributing only 3% to carbon emissions. However, we continue to experience extreme weather conditions And we are told that this situation alone has the potential to wipe out 15% of Africa's GDP by 2030. Currently, Africa loses about 280 million tons of cereal crops per year from land degradation. The cost of inaction is estimated at around 12% of the GDP of all African countries. Ladies and gentlemen, these challenges have further exacerbated the food and nutrition insecurity situation on the continent. Today, approximately 430 million of our fellow brothers and sisters in Africa live under extreme poverty and cannot afford a decent and a healthy diet. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, estimates that 60 million under 5 children suffer from stunting, while another 14 million suffer from wasting. Stunting meaning their height does not measure up to their age. Wasting, also that their weight does not measure up to their age. This is unacceptable and it has to change. Ladies and gentlemen, despite all this seeming gloom and doom, Africa has a real opportunity to transform its food systems, reduce its import bill, and create wealth. However, to transform Africa's food systems, it is required that we do business unusual. We should not do business as usual. Among other things, this will include the things that I think we have to do: ensuring comprehensive transformation of smallholder agriculture. That's number one. 60 to 70% of Africa's agriculture is in the hands of the smallholder farmer. So if you talk about transforming African agriculture, if you ignore the smallholder farmer, you've virtually done nothing. It's not even putting the cart before the horse. It is actually doing nothing. Number two, reducing unpredictability of policies and regulations so as to enhance investments from the private sector. We need the private sector also to come in. But if the policies are not predictable, there is no way the private sector can come in. Capital is very shy. Capital is very shy. Where the policies are not predictable, where the policies are not friendly, don't expect private sector to operate. Don't expect private sector to invest. So it is so critical, because a number of our countries are really faced with unpredictability of policies. You encourage people to come, the following morning you say, we have changed our mind. Now these are now the new tax levels. People have come. Now you say, no, now you can't export. But he has come to that country to invest, to take advantage of the export market. So the unpredictability of policies is a recipe for disaster. And the third is improve on implementation of policies and regulations at regional level for economic, political, and social integration. We are talking of the ACFTA. We have created a big market for Africa. But if we don't implement policies and regulations that are going to allow countries to take advantage, allow investors to take advantage of the market, you create a regional market, and then you have so many tariffs and non-tariff barriers. That's the fourth point. The fourth point I'm going to remove non-tariff barriers, which is one of the single impediments to agri-food systems transformation. We have so many non-tariff barriers. At times you just wake up and impose phytosanitary conditionalities that are totally new. And then you say, oh no, but the next morning you wake up, you have a 1,000% tariffs. So if you really want to transform Africa food system, for Africa food systems, we also have to look at the non-tariff barriers. These pathways highlight the importance of a stable legal and policy environment which builds the confidence of farmers, traders, industrialists, and the other key actors across the board and the general agricultural ecosystem. In other words, there is need for certainty and predictability in a way that we produce, process, distribute, and consume food in our continent. Africa is home to 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land. If you look at other statistics about the agricultural potential in Africa, they are mind-blowing. But suffices it to say that agricultural land that God has blessed us is largely underutilized for both cash and food crops. The agri-food industry in Africa presents a huge opportunity for investments in all its value chain, from production to processing to packaging and trading. Come 2050, this world is going to have 9 billion people. How many years to 2050? Just 25 years. We're going to be 9 billion. The world has to feed these 9 billion. And what is the prospects for feeding these 9 billion? It's in Africa, where at present 60% of the world's unutilized arable land is in this continent. There is this potential, but we have to put our work together to take advantage of that. There are vast inevitable opportunities, investable opportunities in the agricultural sector, which have the potential for job creation, poverty eradication, and food and nutrition security in our continent. In all this, private sector is the key. The past successes in engaging in the private sector in agriculture demonstrates what is possible, and this has to be benchmarked. It is therefore incumbent upon policymakers and legislators to legislate and put in place policies that will accelerate agricultural growth, promote food security, but you can't get that if you don't get to surplus production. We have to produce enough for ourselves and for the world. Africa has that opportunity. Africa, there is that possibility. The role of policy making is critical towards achieving Africa's food systems transformation. And the legislature and the executive need to work closely together to ensure that we have the right enabling environment. Parliamentarians, if in Parliament you enact pieces of legislation that make it inhospitable for people to invest in the agricultural sector, all these opportunities and potentials will not be utilized. We expect that parliamentarians will be in the forefront to ensure that that rules of the game are created. Favor flexibility in the agri-food systems so that it benefits the producers, traders, and customers. Support the development of inclusive trade and export frameworks. This is important to encourage participation of small businesses, the youth, and women. Last but not least, support the domestication of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area protocols. At country level, so that to ensure the continental market is open for access by all African countries. I was in Ghana 6 or 8 months ago. We had an event. I'm chairing an informal organization we call the ALF, African Leaders Forum. This is a forum where retired leaders like me and the others meet and exchange ideas. We had our meeting in Ghana because the subject of discussion was promoting trade in the agricultural commodities. We were doing to. But one thing that struck me, there are still a number of African countries that have not ratified the CFTA. A big shame. You know, when you talk about Africa coming together, CFTA is that process that brings Africa together on the economic front. Otherwise, Africa will always be together talking on the political front. And the political front talking about what? Crisis. There is a coup in Niger. Now what do? Let's organize, send troops. There is a coup in Mali. We don't want them to come to meetings of the African Union. But when it comes to discussing the bread and butter issues, which the CFTA is meant to promote, ratification becomes a problem. Ratification does not seem to be an urgent matter. But these very fellows who who sat in Addis Ababa, endorsed the CFTA, and bragged being an African-owned, homegrown. They dragged their feet ratification. I was really appalled. Those of us who are retired there came there not feeling so good, but our appeal is to parliaments, to parliamentarians, those in leadership positions. Encourage governments in Africa to ratify so that this important instrument can come into full force. Of course, it can come to force with the minimum, but we want it to come into force with every country ratifying the treaty and depositing the instruments of ratification with the African Union. Well, those are just my opening remarks. I'll now sit and listen and report back to the retired African leaders. Those of you whom we left in office, how you are conducting yourself and how you want to take the African continent to the next level. Thank you.
Please, I think we can do better. Let's give a better round of applause. I told you this is the most important session of the African Food Systems Forum. You now have the challenge, especially members of parliament. If you listen carefully, you have the challenge what you need to go and do back home to get Africa on the right track. Thank you so much, sir, for your guidance and wisdom. I have a co-moderator. He's Dr. Apollo Nwafo from Agra. He's the Vice President in charge of Policy and State Capability. Will help me to run the next sequence of sessions. And I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Robert Ouma. I am Regional Director for an activity known as Policy Link, which is a USAID activity. But more important, I'm an African and an Afro-optimist. I was telling some people yesterday that I'm also a possibilitarian. And that word is not in the dictionary. I created it because I believe that it is possible to change Africa. And it's possible for us to come together and change Africa. So we have, as I said, a sequence of very interesting conversations coming up. First is a fireside chat. And then we have two short but very impactful roundtables. And we have lots of members of parliament, current and former. And as I invite Apollo to lead us in this fireside chat, I would like to just recognize all members of parliament in the room. So if you are a member of parliament, please put your hands up and so that we can recognize you. If you are an MP, a legislator, a lawmaker, can we see them? Maybe they should stand so that you can see them. Yes, let's give them a hand clap because they're a big part of the focus of our conversation. Thank you so much, Honorable Members of Parliament. We look forward to your engagement and your support. With that, I'd like to invite Apollo, please, to come on stage and also lead us in the next conversation. Thank you, Apollo.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Your Excellency, Dr. Kikwete, for those very insightful opening remarks. I think I saw an advert that said you could be retired from work, but not retired from life. So we're still going to draw on your wisdom. And those of you who are looking at the program of AGRF, Dr. Kikwete will be speaking on Thursday in the morning at the Council of the Wise. It's made up of former presidents and heads of states who will be joining him to discuss strategically on food systems transformation from the experience, but also the other things that they will be sharing with us so that we can draw from their wisdom. So we will look forward to hearing more from you, Your Excellency, during the Council of the Wise. I'll quickly go to a fireside chat, and I'm going to invite two people, two very distinguished parliamentarians. I'd like to invite, first of all, Honorable Dede Sadi, the chairperson of the Agriculture Committee for the Pan-Africa Parliament. Please join me on the stage, Honorable Dede, please. And forgive me if I am not pronouncing that name properly, but it's Honorable Dede Molisho Sadi, please. You don't want to clap for your parliamentarian. Then when you get home, you say, our lawmakers are not doing, please. You will be looking for him and his secretary will tell you, you can't see him until next weekend. And I would also like to invite a distinguished senator from the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Dandutse Muntari Mohammed. Please join me on stage. So I'm going to join you there because this is quite a discussion. So permit me to please come this way and to ask a few questions. Okay, I'm going to do this as possible as I can. I would like to begin, distinguished parliamentarians, with sharing with you my experience. I haven't been a clerk of a committee. I want to put that disclaimer. Neither have I been a parliamentarian. So we're learning from both of you. But I have engaged with your colleagues on a number of issues, from water resources to agriculture, to river basin authorities, who were going to do the irrigation schemes, but also on the EITI, the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, where I, did work with your colleagues and on the oil and gas governance, but also when we were looking at the Natural Resources Code for ECOWAS. For the ECOWAS region. And I did discover a number of things. There used to be, and to a certain extent, there still is. This is not to put the blame on yourselves or the executives, but there still is a gap between understanding what transformation looks like between yourselves and the executive of the government. And I think it's because there seems to be in some cases, both of you are looking at things, like looking at the different sides of an elephant, or sometimes you're probably just looking at totally different things. What is the problem? How do we address that gap in understanding what policies to advance, what what transformation looks like as far as food systems is concerned? And let me tell you how that has played out. How that has played out is that we see that some of your committees, for example, one challenge we've seen is that the health ministry will budget for school feeding, right? The education ministry will budget for school feeding. And the Ministry of Agriculture would also budget for school feeding, right? And so sometimes it looks like, so who's responsible? And sometimes it's like about, so where does that vision lie? And what is the purpose, for example, of school feeding? So I'm laying out this example of the challenge from my experience working with, parliamentarians across countries and in my own home country to ask you, why is there usually this gap between the executives and yourselves on what policies to advance and who is responsible to drive that policy from a food systems perspective? Any of you can start. They're looking at each other. If you don't mind, please switch on your mic.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that the problem should be what the president said before. We spend a lot of time to discuss politics and politics and politics, and we forgot that the problem, economic problem, food problem, is more important and need more dialogue between parliamentarian and executive. You know, it's the same problem we have with climate change. We have a lot of meeting on COP 25, COP 26, 27, but we forgot that we have to work together, parliamentarian and executive, to solve the problem. You know, as you say, the Minister of Education can ask money for nutrition, but the Minister of Agriculture don't ask money for nutrition. The problem is we need to work together. Now, for example, in September, it will be a budget session. You know, many countries in Africa has less than 5% of the budget for agriculture. But what is the problem? Now we meet here, we discuss. Maybe now, the moment is now to work together, executive and parliamentarian, to see how to solve the problem. For me, that is the way.
Okay, thank you, sir. Senator, do you mind?
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity as a Senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And very importantly, I want to sincerely commend the effort of the government of Tanzania and AGRA for making this forum, African Food System forum to take place. As a parliament, I think it is high time for us and the executive to look inward and also face the current challenges and realities in the world, because considering the fact of the economic situations which affected globally, and it is high time now to come with a concrete solution, honest solution to face the lean resources we have in our countries, and also to create an enabling environment for different countries in the world so that they can come in and out of our African sister countries to work together and see how we'll have innovations and inventions in terms of technological development so that to wipe away hunger and anger of all our citizens that we are working under them. Because if you look at the legislator or the executives, they are becoming partner with the sweat of the masses, and the masses are not much happy with most of the countries that are leading them. It's because of the policies. I can give you example as a case study. I'm a student of history. I'm in the system. I have never been in business or in politics. I joined politics because of the need to ensure peace and stability of my local government. I served as local government for 10 years, and I served as lawmaker for 13 years, and I am now elected as Senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You have to tell your people the naked truth. No matter how little you have, if you have, you should put them on the table for them. I believe they can understand you and they will continue to support you, even if the elite or the political class doesn't like you. But what is fundamental, what we are lacking, if some of us were voted, if it is executive or even if it is legislator, they run away from the real political class, that is the masses who are supporting them. They don't care of their needs, they don't care of their services, they don't care of what is supposed to be taken care of, like healthcare, like agricultural sector, like educational sector. All these things, despite all obstacles and setbacks, you can be able to achieve no matter how little to make them happy and make them more sustainable. I believe it is time for now, under this forum, to ensure that we as legislators, we advocate because we make law. We must force the executive to understand that it's not business as usual. Things are changing. There is climate changes. There is a lot of insecurity challenges which was imported from different countries of the world. So I think this, when we are coming out with a communique, we need to come out with a concrete arrangement so that we can move this world. Because we cannot be creating inhumanity to our dear brothers in any part of the world. Those that are selling arms and ammunition, we have to also face them squarely to ensure that those things is a thing of the past. Let them face reality. There is a lot of unbundled opportunities and businesses that they can be done to make things work and make things realistic. Because everyone has one life. If somebody kills somebody, what is the benefit? You will also surely die. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Thank you. Thank you for this very, wealth of comments. Honorable Sida, I did hear you say we should work together. And Senator Mohammed, you talked about driving technologies, making sure that as parliamentarians we face the real politics, and the politics is with the people, responding to the people. How do we close those gaps? So for example, if a government, the executive, which is led by the president, comes to you and say, look, we want to have an economic transformation program where agriculture is either the main pillar or one of the main pillars. I've looked at a number of transformation agenda across countries. There are either 5, 4 pillars. Agriculture and food security is always sitting as one of them. What is your role in shaping that transformation as parliamentarians? And how would you ensure that you are responding to the people, but also responding to changes in the context? For example, like Senator, you talked about technologies. What's your role in that sense to ensure that you're closing the gap between yourselves and the executive, and that you are supporting the entire government system to drive transformation?
For example, this forum, if you bring parliamentarian and executive together in the forum like this, we make commitment, and when we are back in our country, so we can start to have a legal framework, how to domesticate what we decide in international. For example, Malabo Declaration. We have Malabo Declaration, and the executive have 2 years the meeting. They evaluate the program. But if we cannot bring parliamentarians together in this meeting to see how to adapt the legal framework, how can we do it in a country? I think that now time is coming to work together. In this forum, for example, we bring parliamentarians. In COP, in climate change, we have to bring parliamentarians together, because the COP was only the program file, only the meeting of executive, a government, no parliamentarian meeting. Now we are working in the way to bring together parliamentarian executive to work together. For me, I think that that is the way to reduce the gap.
Great, thank you. Senator Mohammed, please.
Thank you very much. Another very important and fundamental issue to success in agriculture and communication, I think is a key component now for any reasonable investor who want to invest wisely and responsibly. And if there is a concrete arrangement and agreement between the Parliament and the executives to invest in those sectors, these sectors are key to success because communication is a global village. And also what you are doing, and if we can domesticate, as said, and remove all the barriers and impediments that are constraint to most of the world, most of the problems, I believe, can be achieved within a short period of time, because most of the money, most of the budgets planning process in most of the African countries, they don't channel the money where it will have a return of investment. Despite the fact of the lean resources, if at least money can be utilized for a better purpose, it will have value addition and it will create an opportunity even to change the existing situation for the landmark of the future. Let's example, our young and teeming youth that are in the street waiting for government work. If they are channeled towards agriculture and they are giving proper training and they were giving financial support, I believe year in, year out of 100%, even if it is 60 or 40% of them become sustainable and take it as a business, I believe it is worthy of praise.
Great, thank you, thank you, Senator Mohammed, and thank you, Honorable Sadi. I've heard three things. One from you, Honorable Sadi, is that we need to co-create, you said, by bringing the executives and the parliamentarians to the same forum to co-create that vision of agricultural transformation. And from you, Senator Mohammed, I hear you says we need to look at ensuring that those investments that you approve at Parliament are channeled to the right investment. So it's about accountability. And a second point you mentioned was around the fact that we need to look at where the return on investments are. So if parliamentarians can begin to think about when we're approving a budget, how are we looking at the return on those investments? So those three things are important, and I think we will hold that. Co-creation, accountability, and looking at return on investment. And I want to thank both of you for this quick fireside chat. I think we will take away these 3 points with us. Please, let's give a hand for them. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We will go to a round table now, and I would like to invite a few people to the round table to please join me here on the stage. I would like to invite, I'll still like to invite Honorable Sidi Mohammed, the Tunis speaker, and he's the speaker for the ECOWAS Parliament. I would like to invite Honorable Sidi Mohammed. Please join us on stage. I would also like to invite Mr. Zwelivele Wandisizwe, who is Wandisizwe. Okay, now I don't know how to pronounce this, so you will forgive me, Honorable Member. And that is Dalunga Mandela, the chairperson for the Parliament portfolio for a Committee on Agriculture and Land Reform, as well as Rural Development for the Republic of South Africa. I would also like to invite Dr. Edida Lubenga Ampare, Senior Program Specialist, Climate Resilient Food Systems, for the International Development Research Center, IDRC. So can I please have our parliamentarians and Dr. Edida on stage. I would also like to invite Honorable Rose Kai. Honorable Rose Kai is the Minister for Investments in Togo. I would also like to invite Mr. Honorable Godfred Jasso, who's the Member of Parliament for Ghana, to please come to the stage. I would also like to invite I hope all the people I'm inviting are here. Thank you. Please take your seats. And I would like to invite also to the Parliament, His Excellency, the Governor of Bungoma of the Republic of Kenya, to please join us on the stage. Thank you so much. And I will, since you have space for me to join you as parliamentarians, I might consider going for elections. So let me come and join you there so that maybe I will, how do we say that back home? I will catch the spirit of standing for elections. Thank you. Thank you. Right. Okay. I would like all of us, to quickly introduce yourself. You've been introduced generally, but maybe as you respond to the first question, kindly introduce yourselves again, your name, so that the audience can understand, who is speaking. We were looking at, the policies, the institutions and regulations. And this is in light of the fact that we all know that the comprehensive African Agricultural Development Program, what a lot of us call the Malabo Declaration, even though that followed from the Malabo Declaration, that was a program that was developed as a result of the Malabo Declaration by the heads of states, is meant to ensure that Africa, we eradicate extreme poverty and hunger by 2025. This is 2 years, or actually less than 2 years actually, because 2023 is almost gone. This is September. We're probably entering the last quarter by next month. So it's just a year and 3 months, and the current CADEP will come to an end. The question is, what have we not done well from your perspective, and how did that impact on the progress we've seen so far? Because the latest CADEP report is showing that our countries are progressing, but very slowly. In fact, to be honest, some of our countries have actually relapsed and are on a number line. They are in the minus stage. So rather than progressing or slow progress, a lot of them backtracked. Today, only 2 countries actually have achieved a 10% spend on agriculture. And the results have been less than satisfactory, I must confess. So the CADEP report is out there. It's a public document, so I'm not quoting a classified document, right? So from where you sit as parliamentarians, what is the problem? What did we not do well? And in your role, what do you think from, looking back, what could you have done differently to have contributed to progress in achieving the Malabo Declaration, or in sort of achieving the targets of the CADEP program? I'll probably start from my far right, sir. Please.
Thank you so much. My name is Kenneth Lusaka, governor in a county called Bungoma in Western Kenya, and the chair of the Agriculture Committee of Council of Governors in Kenya, and also Speaker Emeritus of the Senate of the Republic of Kenya. I think I want to pick up from where His Excellency Jakaya Kikwete left, that we have concentrated a lot in terms of politics. We have put politics ahead of everything else. Some countries are in a campaign mode throughout. And I think when we do that, we lose track on exactly what we want to do. In fact, I was sharing with him and asking how many countries have made the Maputo Declaration of maybe ensuring that we have 10% of agriculture. If I talk about Kenya, and I'm here because as the chair of the Council of the Committee on Agriculture, because agriculture is devolved in Kenya. It's being implemented by the county governments. And therefore, we are calling upon all counties to ensure that at least we get to the 10% that was declared in the Maputo Declaration. But again, we are saying, what are some of the policies that we have in our countries? For example, the land tenure system. Is it tenable to continue subdividing land into small pieces that are not agricultural viable? So those are some of the issues that we should be looking at. What policies do we have? How are we also, for example, ensuring that people can access the land that they want to use for agricultural purposes, and the legal framework that we also talking about? For example, how are we protecting those people, ensuring that people have access to food? So I think it all depends on the political leadership. What direction are you giving? Is the political leadership leading from the front by ensuring that agriculture is given a priority, or what is the priority of each particular country? And I think that is where it all stands, that once the president, for example, leads by ensuring that the country the trajectory is on agriculture, then we get it right. But once there's no political goodwill at the top, then we'll not get it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Please.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I am Mrs. Miveda, Investment Promotion Minister from Togo. And I am executive. I'm not parliamentary, but I am execution. That means that we have to execute, to follow up, and to see that, to make assessment, and to be sure that what has been set up according to the law, according to the policy, have impact on the ground. And speaking about what we have done since the declaration of Malabo, and what is the result, what I can say is that one thing is the access of the resources. Because we have all of us, we have seen that we are not increasing the contribution of the agriculture in our country as we want. Speaking about Togo, we have 60% of the population who is in rural, but the GDP of the agriculture in our country is 23%. Agriculture contributes to 23%, and what we have set up is that, according to our roadmap, we have put a strong focus in agriculture, looking for our own advantage, the country advantage, and what we can do. We have put a strong focus. And then we have also seen that as 60% of the population is in rural zone, there is a challenge according to the access of the land. There is a challenge according to the access of the seed, according to the access of the fertilizer. And then all the policy and all the program that you have set up to allow the population to have access, to reduce this challenge, that is what you have set up. And one of the examples that you have done is that we have set up something that we call in French ZAP. It is a program where you identify 100 hectares of area, and you provide to the rural population irrigation, fertilizer, seed, and training. Because one of the things also is that even though you can provide all those things, if there is no training, if there is no follow-up in why they implement all the protocol that they have to implement, you will not have the yield and the increase of the production that you want to have. and it is the way where we are going. And one thing my neighbor has said that we need also to have a strong involvement of the head of the state. That means that we need to show that it is the main focus, and we need to show also that succeed in agribusiness, succeed in agriculture is something which is suitable for our young population. In their dreams, most of them don't see themselves as agriculture. For them, agriculture is something that you are in rural population, you are poor, and we need also to show them that, for you, speaking about your population, that it is something which is sustainable. You can earn, you can become rich when you are agribusiness. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Honorable Godfred, I'm going to change your question. Yeah. So you heard what the Honorable Minister said, from Togo around, access to resources. You also heard what His Excellency, the Governor, also talked about. My question to you is, between the time you approve those budgets at the Parliament and the spending, what is missing?
So, thank you very much for the question. And Your Excellency.
And remember that even when, because one of the things that we also saw as a challenge is the fact that despite yourselves as parliamentarians approving these budgets, it's been difficult to spend. There's been a problem of absorptive capacity. But between yourselves and the time of spending, what is missing that should be in place to drive absorptive capacity? Because when we look at the CADEP report, part of the challenge is, governments, they say, well, yeah, we didn't approve up to 10%, but it's not even being spent. Why?
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. And Your Excellency, you can see the moderator has already excluded himself from joining politics, because when he came to me, he had to rephrase a new question for us. So you don't do that and come into politics. That was just by the way. I think spanning from that is the policy incoherence that we observe across many African countries. You would notice that from the biennial review reports from the CADEP program from 2017, 2019, 2021, something is clear, that countries' policies along the program, if you study countries across the continent, you would observe some incoherence in their policy and commitment to agriculture. First of all, that is why you see their GDP expenditure varying across the years. And so I think the role of information is one of the reasons. Role of information to the executive and role of information to the legislature, as well as role of information to even the non-state actors that are in the conversation. So my view is that we need to expand the way we conceptualize the governance architecture. We have focused so much on executive and expecting the executive to deliver. We vote for our legislators and expect them to hold the executive accountable. But what tools do the legislators come with to be able to hold the executive adequately accountable? My view is that there is a shrinking of the conceptualization of governance to think that government is just the executive. I think we should think of, if we are thinking of policy action, we should think of the legislators as part of government, playing the role of legislation and oversight. If we can take along the legislators in policy conceptualization, its formulation, and then its implementation arrangement, then we will be able to adequately resource the legislators with the information that they require, with the tools they require to be able to hold the executive accountable. If legislators appreciate why we must spend X percentage on agricultural programs in our countries, then we'll be able to demand that of the executive to ensure that those percentages are actually spent. Number two, timely release of funds to be able to get these actions that you referred to. You see, we approve budgets, and then the executives have the responsibility to do the releases for implementation. Now, if the capacities of Parliament are not adequate enough to know when and how to pinch the executive to release the funds in a timely manner, you will not have the results that we are expecting. You have to remember that agricultural activities are timed. Most agricultural activities in Africa are season and rain-fed agriculture. So if a government ministry doesn't receive its budget at a specific time, there is no way it will succeed in the activities planned for the year. So I think that non-state actors, the parliaments, and the executive must be seen as working along the same platform to be able to get information adequate enough to be able to prosecute holding governments accountable and ensuring that what is so agreed by all parties is so implemented as well.
Thank you so much, Honorable Godfred. Thank you. Thank you. That's very beautiful. Dr. Edida, right? Yes. Thank you. I was going to ask you, as a specialist, as an expert, what do you think we need to do with the parliamentarians to ensure that they understand the changing policy environment in how they make policies and approve budgets, particularly with respect to food systems, and agriculture? What do you think are the things that, or the sort of capacities, yes, the sort of capacities our governments should have to drive, to be able to make the right decisions, at the parliamentary level to drive food systems and agricultural transformation? But you can still address some of the earlier questions I did ask if you can.
Okay, thank you so much, Apollos. And I am not a parliamentarian, I am a researcher. My name is Eddie Dampire. I work for Canada's International Research Center, and we fund research, development research. So from the research perspective, I think that the parliamentarians and other policymakers, we need information, evidence that we need to be able to, that they need to be able to operate. And so I'm going to pick out one example of what I think that is a missing gap that even since morning we've been talking about it. We've talked a lot about putting women in the center and the youth to address inequalities, to be able to move. So I think that if the parliamentarians, for example, understand that and appreciate it, because we are not going to make any transformation unless we address inequalities, right? There's never going to be any food transformation, in the food system until we have addressed the gaps, the inequalities that are happening within. So even as the discussion was that we need to put women at the center, look at the policies that we have. We want to put women at the center, but the policies we have do not provide for that sufficiently. And we've done studies on those policies. They leave, and youth is a new initiative, so let me focus on women. We talked a lot about youth. So you find that these policies are not so much putting out the clear strategies on how this is going to be done. So we lag behind when it comes to that. If we put women at the center, it means that the policies we are working with to implement have clear strategies on how we are going to address these inequalities, So then we need some of the policies already that can help. Since the discussion started, they were talking about social protection policies, they are talking about care policies that can really make women operate in the food system. And Parliament needs to understand that. When we also have a problem with the norms that we believe, even when policies have a meager fraction of addressing, talking about women, for example, they talk about gender inequalities as women. And then because they say women, when they go out to implement, they are looking at adding women, adding youth, but without clear strategies, what do we need? What frameworks must be put in place to bring them, provide, for example, the financing that they need to be able to implement that technologies? How do we enable them to go ahead and access these technologies or information, be it digital technologies, be in the space and play? How do we provide for women's leadership, you know, from production to processing to distribution? They need to be in that space if they are to contribute. If parliamentarians understand that in their mind, the norms, the attitudes change, that we need them, they are going to be able to implement and be able to deliver on the legislation that helps these groups to be effectively integrated, skills built, and they will be able to contribute. So they need information, and they have to be working. It means that having this information, then there is a way they're going to be working with other stakeholders, with researchers. They are not coming in to be told, you know, that this is the evidence, how do you use it? But they are willing to engage within even the research processes, to learn together, to co-create the solutions, and then have the commitment to be able to deliver on those solutions.
Thank you.
The other thing, let me add another thing that is problematic, is that at the parliamentary level, then if they get that, what we find also the evidence shows, then it doesn't fall through to the local levels. So at the national level, if it works, it doesn't follow through to the local governments, and it doesn't follow through to the communities. So we have a national level operating a policy that prescribes certain things, but the local governance level, the measure level, is completely detached. And then when you reach level, then it doesn't happen. So there is an element, the policies that we are using as legislators to deliver must interface vertically through the local governments, but also horizontally across ministries. If you talk about inter-ministry, inter-sector linkages, we have so many policies, so many agriculture policy, fisheries policy, livestock policy, nutrition policy. I mean, how do we work with that? So considering that policies take long to change, it means that we must develop frameworks or even strategies or guidelines that are intersectoral. And that would also address the issue of budgeting you talked about, that you can sit and work together with clear guidelines on how each sector is going to deliver on that, because it's the same thing. We cannot be talking about production when we don't talking about nutrition, we are not talking about health and safe food. It's all interlinked. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Those are very excellent points, Dr. Edida, and I hear you around data and evidence. And let me, on that strength, turn to you, Your Excellency. You lead a county, and you want that county to be the best, right, in Kenya, so that people like me can come and decide to build a house there. I wanted to check with you, what is your challenge with evidence-based decision-making? You know, what challenge do you face with data and evidence in either crafting policies or implementing policies? Because, you know, one of the things we do understand, especially over my years of experience, is that when you approve a budget, you have approved a set of policies. The only difference is that they are written in figures, yeah? Because a budget is just a figurative expression of a policy, if you want to put that in simple terms. But what challenge do you face with data and evidence? You know, and what do you think should be done differently when you want to approve a budget that, you know, with regards to evidence? What evidence do you want to see? And do you think there's a challenge with parliamentarians, you know, accessing evidence or looking at it?
Thank you so much once more. I think when you talk about evidence, and for example, from my point of view as heading a county and implementing agriculture. One area where we failed, or we didn't get it right, is, for example, supplying fertilizer that's not suitable for whatever we are doing in that particular county. So one of the issues that we have done as a way of getting evidence is to carry out soil analysis so that you are supplying the correct inputs to the farmer to get the correct yields. Secondly, we also have to, for example, understand that one of the challenges we face are extension officers, because again, you will give inputs to the people, but again, we don't have enough extension officers to be there to direct them on how best to carry out whatever they want to carry out. Another thing the challenge that we're having is, and I think this is across board, look at the population that's involved in agriculture. What is the age group that's involved in agriculture? The majority who are energetic, who are the youth. Again, when you carry out the research, you find that most youths are not involved in agriculture. It's left for people above 50 and 60. So what can we do to incentivize the youth also to take up agriculture? And I think one of the ways that we can do is to look at agriculture not as agriculture, but as agribusiness, so that they also get attracted that we are doing agriculture not as a culture, but as a business. And that's why we are now focusing on what we call aggregated industrial parks, where we are going to add value to what is produced, so that by the time it leaves, for example, the county, we have added value to it. If it's milk, we are talking about yogurt and other value additional things that we want to do that. And then the youth will also be encouraged. Even in curriculum, we have also carried out. When I was growing up in school, anytime they wanted to punish you, they would send you to the shamba to go and weed. So you grew up knowing that agriculture is a punishment. So we really need to get it also right by getting into the curriculum, and so that from the youth, at that formative stage, youth grow up knowing that agriculture is not a punishment, it's a way of also sustaining the population that we have. So those are some of the challenges that I face as a governor. Then also, our president has also given direction that we don't want to subsidize consumption, we want to subsidize production. That's why we must subsidize our farmers. We must give our farmers, like even in my county, we have been giving free fertilizer, free seeds to the vulnerable groups just to bring them up. But again, if we subsidize, like with during our last regime, we were subsidizing consumption, and that's why we got it wrong. But now the current president has come and said that that's all, we are following a cure. And that's why I was saying that the leadership is very important, that let us subsidize production. Fertilizer that was costing, say, Kenya shilling 7,000 has been brought down to 2,500. Therefore, most farmers now who are vulnerable can be able to access fertilizer to improve production. So I think those are some of the challenges that we have, and those are some of the strategies that we have put in place to ensure that we have enough production, and also to manage post-harvest. Post-harvest, again, is a challenge, because again, you can have a bumper harvest, but then if you don't manage the post-harvest, then you have a problem. That is why we are starting what we are calling aggregated industrial parks, so that at least all the food can be aggregated in one place, and that will save the farmer from losses after he has produced. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you. Because of time, I'm going to give all of you 30 seconds each. We are looking at post-CADEP, what happens beyond 2025, such that we do not become the only hungry continent by 2030. Because we really, really need to do something, and something quick and transforming about our food systems, so that we don't become the only hungry continent by 2030. In 30 seconds, what should we focus on, and why? In 30 seconds. I'll start from Dr. Edida and then go down that way, please. Mike?
Sorry, thank you. Put in place structures, policies, let me call them policies. They could be policy frameworks for putting women and youth at the center. Provide the skills they need, build their capacities, and give them the resources they need to deliver. You will move faster. Secondly, you need to work with one thing.
Okay, I'll
just allow me, because we're talking about delivering on what we promised. We need data. You have to work with research, and you need to put in resources for research, fund research too. Because, for example, it's talking about youth, but have we made an assessment to see their needs, their interests? Are the seeds you've given them, are they going to use them? What is their interest in? What are their priorities? What are the priorities of women and youth? Address those priorities within the food system. They may not grow the crop, but they could do the processing. You need to be clear what it is they need, support that, and we will be able to make progress.
Thank you, thank you. Honorable Godfred, please.
Thank you very much. So I think that we could think of what to do with the opportunities we have. And that is, how do we ensure that the people who are in leadership work together? So let's create capacity development needs for all the actors. Expand their capacity to be able to police the process. Number two, how do we raise financing? Most countries are on debt exchange programs in Africa at the moment. But we have to increase the productive capacity for food in these countries. What is the contribution of our financial institutions to increasing the productive capacity? Can we form a legislation across continents to force them to commit to some financing of these processes? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Honorable Minister, please.
Thank you. According to me, I think that we have a lot of policy, we have a lot of program, and we have a lot of reflection about how to increase the agri-productivity in our country. For me, the main thing is that we have also to change the mindset of our population. It is the key, because if we do not change the mindset, we still have policy, we still have program, we will not succeed. I just want to say last thing, how we cannot produce, like, for example, Ukraine. Ukraine, when you say the superficie of the land, maybe in a lot of African countries, the superficie is more than Ukraine, but the productivity, the yield is much, much better than in Africa. And I think that the main thing is the mindset of our population, and to put together small farmer and big farmer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Your Excellency.
Just back to what I started, let's look at the land tenure system, subdivision of our land. Is it productive? Let us look at agriculture as a business, agribusiness, as opposed to agriculture, like I've said. Let's look at subsidizing production instead of consumption. And then let's also work towards the 10% allocation of our budgets towards agriculture. And finally, governance, because we must have stability in our countries, political stability, for all these things that we have talked about to take place. With instability, we can forget about everything. Thank you.
Thank you. So ensuring that we're increasing productivity by subsidizing it, looking at governance, changing the mindset, looking at capacity strengthening and the financing, and looking at data and focusing on women and youth. I want to thank you, all of you, for your very deep insights, and I think this will be taken into consideration as we support the next CADEP process going forward. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for supporting this panel.
Asante sana. Asante sana. Is my microphone on? Good, it is. Asante sana. That means thank you very much in Kiswahili. If you are in Tanzania, don't leave Tanzania without a word or two of Kiswahili in you. It's our beautiful language here. I'm very much aware that we are coming up close to lunch time, and people begin to worry about their food security, your personal food security, right? But I invite you to bear with me and worry a little bit more about Africa's food security for maybe another half an hour or so, as we have the last conversation, which is another panel that will include, and as I mentioned their names, let's invite them to come in front. Honorable Neema Lugangira, who's a Member of Parliament here in Tanzania. Please give her a clap as she comes. Let's give her some strength. Karibu, karibu sana. Welcome. Then Honorable Jeremy Lisoba is an MP from Congo, member of the National Assembly in Congo Brazzaville, I should say. Welcome, Honorable Lisoba. Then I'd like to invite Constance Okeke, who's the program lead. Give her a clap, first of all. Welcome, Constance. Constance is the program lead for public finance for agriculture at ActionAid International. So she's from the civil society. She's not an MP. Yeah? Then let me check if I have with me Desalen Wedajo from Ethiopia. Did he manage to come? No. And I also want to quickly check if Francois Kanimba is here or Honorable Samira Rafaela. Good, none of them is here. But as I mentioned at the beginning, we have a lot of members of parliament in here. I might bring some of them into this next conversation. I'll come and sit with you in a moment, but let me just say, I have to remember what the president said at the beginning. Yeah, he challenged us. He was asking MPs like you, at least the two of you that are up here and the rest of you, to respond to his call. And you know, in Tanzania, for example, and Kenya are neighbors. And I can tell you that if there is no food production in Tanzania, Kenyans will go hungry. Take it from me. There are a lot of areas where you can work as a member of parliament within your country, but if you don't coordinate across borders with what's happening in other countries, in your region, let's say it's East African community, or across Africa in general. And trade is one example that the president highlighted, the FCFTA, where some countries have signed, some have not. We are waiting. It should be an easy and simple matter. I've been involved in CADAP, for example, this Comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program for a while now, looking at how it goes, because I think this could be a solution to Africa's problem. We could find a way to make sure no African child goes to bed hungry. But in many CADAP forums, I don't see members of parliament. There are very few, sometimes none at all. So there's a challenge of how we can have interparliamentary collaboration. And I want to ask you, Neema, as well as Jeremy, real quick, what are you going to do? This is not a question about, let's do this, let's do that. It's what are you going to do as members of parliament to bring together the national assemblies in Africa to work together on food systems transformation so we can have food on the table for everybody. What are your plans? Let's start with ladies first. Honorable Neema, over to you.
Thank you very much. And as you introduce myself, I'm Neema Lugangira, Member of Parliament in Tanzania. And I'm very honored and humbled to be here in front of you, but mostly humbled, a little nervous to be speaking in front of my former president, His Excellency Dr. Jakaya Kikwete. And before I answer your question, I think I need to take a moment to acknowledge His Excellency, former President Dr. Jakaya, for the great work that he has done towards, and his commitments during his tenure and now in his very busy retirement, in pushing and prioritizing agriculture and nutrition. A lot of the agricultural plans that we have, even Tanzania joining the Sun Movement was done during his tenure. And I had the opportunity to work as the first head of policy and enabling environment at SAGOT. This is Southern Agricultural Growth Corridor of Tanzania, that was set up to promote public-private partnership and investment in agriculture. And this is a brainchild of His Excellency, President Jakaya Kikwete. So he has done a lot of work in this space. And now to answer your question, one of the experiences I had while working at SAGOT was I came to realize that a lot of initiatives policy interventions, legislations, things were happening in exclusion of parliamentarians. Stakeholders would only go to parliamentarians when there's a crisis, or when there's a problem, or there is a favor that is needed, or when there's a law that has been passed and they're not so happy about. But the engagement was missing. And because the engagement and inclusion of parliamentarians was missing, it meant that even the understanding and the alignment of parliamentarians was also missing. So in my role at the time at SACOT, I had the great honor to try and see how can we at SACOT do it differently by engaging parliamentarians and getting their buy-in and making them be part and parcel of a process, but also promoting peer learning. You know, they say seeing is believing. So when you're talking about challenges, take parliamentarians on the field for them to see the challenges. Parliamentarians are politicians. So for something to make sense to a politician, you need to package it in such a way that the politician will see that it's impacting his votes. It can impact his re-election. So those kind of things, I guess my almost 4 to 5 years at SACOT led to my transition into politics, because my next job was now a member of parliament, and here I am. So to answer you, one of the things that I personally, ever since being a member of parliament, I have been dreaming of is to see how can continental parliamentarians come together within Africa. His Excellency spoke about the AFCTA. Why is it still not ratified until now? We have also the Malabo declaration on the declaration on cybersecurity. It's after 8 years we're able to get just 14 countries to sign up to ratify. And the biggest gap is the inclusion and involvement of members of parliament from national parliaments has been missing. So you find that things are agreed upon at AU level, but there is no trickle down to national parliaments. So members of parliament in the respective countries may not be aware or aligned of what has been agreed and what is our role in that process. So one of the things that we're very grateful that through this Africa Food Systems Forum, and here I also have to commend our current president, Her Excellency Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan, because in her 2.5 years as president, the budget for agriculture has tripled. My colleague who just left here was talking about extension officers. Our president has made sure that extension officers now have transport. They all have motorbikes, because we understand the number is small, but at least if we give them transportation, then they're able to reach more people. But on top of that, during her time on 9th September 2021, and I was an MP at the time, we, in our parliament, we ratified joining AFCTA. So at least Tanzania deserves a round of applause, because we are amongst the countries that have ratified, and we're already walking the talk that His Excellency challenged us with. Now, one of the things that we're going to do as parliamentarians from the African continent is, yesterday we had a whole day. We spent together different members of parliament from about 13 countries from Africa, including Tanzania, and we agreed that we are going to establish the Africa Food Systems Parliamentary Network. The aim is to bring together parliamentarians from African countries, but those who are passionate about food system, passionate about agriculture, passionate about nutrition, so that we can come together and be part of championing the agriculture transformation. And we want to tell stakeholders, we are here as members of parliament, we are ready to work with you, so engage us. Now, we haven't really agreed, but we have the icon in Africa, our president. So one of the things that probably, Your Excellency, you may receive a letter from us of somehow guiding us or being a patron. And here I'm being a politician. They say if you see the master, you have to slide in all your requests. But we are hoping to engage more with different African leaders, retired leaders, to see how we can better form ourselves as parliamentarians and push forward the Africa Food Systems agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Lugangira, for that. So MPs are coming together. This is what she said. They are forming a network on food systems to work together, to coordinate what they do in the different countries. And now I'm adding a bit of my own spice to that. I think this deserves a big clap, because
there is just no way. I already told you that Kenyans would go hungry if Tanzanians, let's say food policy in Tanzania is not great and production goes down. It affects East Africa. We are joined at the hip. So I like that, but I want to hear also from your fellow MP, Honorable Jeremy Lisoba. You are from a different region, and does this make sense to you? Do you see a need for cooperating? And if you could give us an example of an area that you feel would be ripe for working together across boundaries as members of Parliament. Over to you.
So thank you very much, Robert, and good afternoon, everybody. Now, to be very specific about your answer, about your question, one of the key objectives that is being pursued here is the ability to speak the same language. We have heard, not just today here, but also at the plenary session, that there is huge potential on the continent. We all know this. We're all in agreement that we need to solve these problems. We're also in agreement that there are complementarities between the different African agricultural sectors, between the different African economies, that can allow us to become self-sufficient. But so the question we have to ask ourselves is, why is it such a struggle? Part of the reason is that we don't speak the same language. I will give you one very simple illustration. Back in the days of, the early days of CADEP and the Malabo Declaration, we spoke about agricultural transformation. Today we talk about food system transformation. But many of those who were involved, who have been involved in this context for a while, would know that when we spoke of agricultural transformation, the majority of countries and ministries considered it was an agricultural problem. And to go further, because there was talk of evidence-based decision-making around these questions, and we talked about the biennial review of CADEP, and particularly the 10% that we are constantly seeking to be invested in agricultural sectors. Those figures today do not meet expectations. I wonder what these figures would look like if we spoke about investments towards African food systems. So these are some of the evolutions in our language that are reflecting evolutions in the way we understand these sectors. I believe that now we're in a position where we understand the holistic nature of this problem. We understand also the complementarities that exist and that can be developed to the benefit of these objectives of achieving food security, food system reform, and all the other objectives that are tied to this question. Another important factor relative to that is the question of collaborate or compete. Once more, yes, we know AGRA has a very interesting study that we were exposed to yesterday, showing that most African countries can reduce their import bills by about 20 to 30% if we would organize the production and trade of specific goods within the continent. So I think we spoke about maize, sorghum, I forget the other ones, but crops that can help us reduce our dependence on imports quite significantly. But if you look into the detail of the different policies at the national level, even regarding those crops, you realize that the mindset is not one of collaboration, but it is one of competition. To the extent possible and relative to the differences in country capacities, everyone wants to be competitive in these sectors. Every African country wants to be self-sufficient. And it is understandable because there are concerns. We are one big African family, but like all families, there are many problems between brothers and sisters. We don't always see eye to eye, and we don't always trust our neighbors. Trust that our neighbors will have our interests or have our best interest in mind. So there is work to do to establish that level of trust that's going to allow us to collaborate on these questions. So, there's so much more to say in this regard, but I think I would conclude by saying that joining parliamentarians in this process is of vital importance because it allows us to have those conversations amongst people who actually are at the heart of policymaking. When you look at the aspect of representation, because we are national representation, we represent our people, legislation, budgeting, as well as oversight or control of the executive, that is the heart of policymaking and implementation at national levels. And so our role is not just one of, fulfilling this, but it's also one of federating and advocating amongst the different stakeholders. And I think doing this around the daily practicalities of implementing these policies, finding coherence amongst those policies between countries, is a way of building the coherence that we need to achieve those objectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful hearing from you articulate so eloquently what members of parliament can do, and then how that translates to also working at regional level. Constance, as I said when I introduced you, you're a little different, so your question will be a little different. Many politicians are a little reluctant to work with civil society for obvious reasons. Sometimes civil society are the ones saying, hey, you're not doing the right thing, change here, change there. I wonder what's your perspective on this, working with MPs and other policy makers, and what you bring into this discussion in terms of engaging with regional, continental platforms that Neema and Jeremy are talking about, where MPs would come together and work together. Because I really want the former president to go to his council. He said he's going to the Council of the Wise and have something to tell them, that MPs are going to be forming this group, they're going to be doing the right things, and civil society is going to do what? So that's the question I want to pose to you. What role do you see for the civil society in Africa in terms of this topic?
Okay, thank you. Robert, for now I'm not a parliamentarian, maybe I'm aspiring to become one. I think the question should actually be, what are we already doing? Gone are the days when you see civil society or non-state actors as the fighters, the looters. We have modified the way we do our aluta. We no longer, only just, come confrontational. We've learned how to use education, information, dialogues to pass on our issues and our messages. Because any transformation you talk about that do not bring to fore the voices of the people, the needs of the people, the marginalized, the underprivileged, you're wasting your time. We can do all the AGRFs, we can do all the consultations. If the issues of the people are not at the forefront, you're wasting your time. But then, as civil society, non-state actors, we've been engaging in all these processes, even with the shrinking space. We try as much as possible to collate our voices. For instance, now, we have what we call the CADIP Non-State Actor Group. This is a coming together of non-state actors made up of smallholder women farmers, farmer organizations, private sectors, civil society organizations, NGOs. We have the youth consortium, we have the media, and we came together and formed what we call the CADIP Non-State Actors. We have leadership structures in all the region because we have to engage at all levels. At the national level, we engage with the parliamentarians. We serve as reminders of the laws they are supposed to be passing, or the bilateral agreements that the executive arm makes in their absence in some of these conversations. We serve as activators because we would push out the issues of the people to the forefront. We also serve as advocates. So we do this engagement, but we realize that a very major stakeholder is missing, and that is the parliamentarians. These are people that are elected to speak for the people. And we realize that most of the time, so take for example, let me use the CADEP. We have the CADEP biannual review report that is done every 2 years. The reports are generated from the country and is disseminated back to the public through the African Union processes. But then you come back to the countries. The parliamentarians have not heard about it. some of the ministry officials have not heard about it, then what of the people? So we realized that going to the parliamentarians to make them realize that this information is important so that you can do better oversight and better legislation is key. Doing that, we also realized that individual efforts was not going to work. And we reached out to the African Union and said, how do you help us get our parliamentarians to sit together to work as a group? And I'm happy that Honorable Nema and Honorable Jeremy has confirmed that yes, the parliamentarians are going to come together. But I think a huge effort, or rather a huge recommendation or acknowledgement goes to the non-state actors for pushing up that. So we are also making sure that they are talking to each other. We are providing information for them to do better legislation. We are also providing evidence-based, data, because they have to hear from the people. Inside this hall, we have our members, we have the women farmers, we have the youth group, we have the media, we have the different, parts of our constituents. Because we will keep talking, keep shouting, keep making the noise until we are here. Because without us on the table, without the information we are bringing on board, the parliamentarians will not work well, the executive arm will not do well. And if you are making policies or programs and you don't take the needs of the people, it's like building a house and forgetting to put the windows and the doors.
Yeah.
I rest my case.
She rests her case. Let's give her a clap. Okay. I'm being signaled that time is up, which is a pity because I have like 20 questions listed. But I want to give you, the members of parliament, a final chance to say something. And maybe one thing that you think an MP can do, in your position as MP, to transform food systems for your country and for your continent. What's that one thing that you effectively, because sometimes it boils down to what Honorable Jeremy is going to do on the floor or in the committees or somewhere advocating. What's that one thing? Real quick, like 30 seconds.
So very quickly, the one thing that I can do as a member of parliament, I've actually already done. This week, we have the Africa Climate Summit going on in Nairobi. Mm-hmm. And here in Tanzania, we have the Africa Food Systems Forum. So what I did, I collaborated with the Global Strategic Communication Organization, and we wrote a letter, call to action to global leaders, that has actually come out today on the Financial Times. And we have 25 members of parliament who have signed it from 18 countries. And one of the things that we're calling for is global development financing organizations to accommodate African countries and developing countries to do debt swap, to use some of the financing instead of repaying debt loans, but to reinvest in agriculture, climate, etc. Thank you.
Debt swap. That's a wonderful idea. Thank you so much. And I hope it's successful efforts. How about you, Honorable Isoba?
I don't think you can ask a question like that and expect a simple answer, but I will try. I think fundamentally, as an MP, relative to this problem, it's first of all spreading the information, letting people understand fully the problems we are facing, fully the opportunities. I think that is something, if you look at the reality of our parliaments, there isn't sufficient ownership of parliamentarians relative to these issues. Yeah. And I think beyond that, it's also understanding that we should not play politics with this question. This is actually a question that requires all of us to come together. It's a question also that has objective measures of performance and impact. This is not always at least, a matter of opinion, a matter of ideology. There are actual tangible facts that we can verify. So let's build consensus around those facts, build strategic orientation, speak the same language, and parliaments can play fully their role if they have.
Thank you very much. Very well said. Again, let's give him a clap. I want to check if we have this special youth message, and thank you so much, Constance and the members of parliament on board. Please, you may take your seats. Do we have Millicent? Just bear with us. We have a special youth message. We care about youth. Where is she? Can I invite you to very quickly come in front? This is a special message from the youth.
His Excellency Dr. Jakaya Kikwete, former President, United Republic of Tanzania, I stand on all the protocols already established. How do you feel when your dreams come to pass? How do you feel? I see smiles on faces. That is how I feel right now. It is a great honor to speak on behalf of the youth in agriculture and also share my story. My name is Millicent Adoboy, co-founder and deputy CEO of Achiever Foods Limited, Ghana, a food scientist and a Generation Africa Impact Award winner. I was born amidst the 1994 Civil War in the northern part of Ghana. Accessing healthy, nutritious food was difficult, and most often we went to bed hungry due to restrictions in the movement of goods like farm produce. Few years later, I almost died due to iron deficiency anemia, a malnutrition disease that causes the deaths of millions in Africa. During this trauma, we discovered a nutrient-dense, climate-adaptive crop, locally called abedru in Ghana, and the English name is turkey berries, which helped improve my nutrition and saved my life. In 2018, after a series of research into this plant, which is perishable, that saved my life, I started Achiever Foods Limited, an agribusiness, in my kitchen with my husband to add value to this crop to improve nutrition and food security. Today, we work with over 50 women smallholder farmers who grow these fruits to feed our mini factory. This helps in reducing post-harvest losses, increasing their income levels, and creating ready markets for them. We have been able to produce 22 lines of products from these turkey berry fruits, ranging from teas, juices, powders, and jam spreads. Ladies and gentlemen, Achiever Foods, within 5 years of business, has won a notable award which was given to us by Generation Africa for our impact in helping to improve the nutrition and health of over 400 pregnant women in Ghana in 2020 who would have lost their lives. We also have been able to improve the nutrition of 50,000 customers across the globe. We have been able also to create jobs for the youth, 16 youth in our mini factory. In addition to the farmers, we have created 66 direct jobs, and this impacts 132 dependents. This is a testament that the youth have the potential to contribute in transforming Africa's food systems. Yet, we have challenges accessing funding to acquire lands, agricultural inputs, machinery to increase production and productivity. Most trade service providers' rates do not favor the transportation of our farm produce and finished products. We also do not have adequate market and trade information to enable us find buyers for our farm produce, our finished products, and especially export to other sub-Saharan African countries where malnutrition and hunger is prevalent. Amidst all these challenges, in 2022, it was much easier to ship our products to United States of America to respond to the purchase orders that came from there, not Africa. Dear parliamentarians, Africa is still a net importer of agricultural products. We spend over $50 billion annually on food imports. But the future is calling, and we, the youth, are answering with unwavering resolve. In every corner of Africa, we are the heartbeats of innovation and progress. as we envision a world where youth inclusion is a priority in policy making, we see inclusion not just as a mere word, but a key factor in unlocking the potential of the food systems within Africa. However, we cannot do this alone. As partners in progress, we call upon you to champion policies that prioritize the following areas. 1, creating an enabling environment for youth-led agribusinesses to flourish. That said, access to finance, providing inclusive, innovative financial solutions that meet specific needs of the marginalized, the youth, women, and the disabled. This will empower us to bring our ideas into impactful ventures. Access to market information and trade information is necessary for us to be able to find buyers and take advantage of the Free Continental Trade Agreement. In addition, access to technologies, and especially making these technologies inclusive to bridge the gender gap so that we can turn our ideas into fruitful ventures and strengthen the food system. Number 2, we advocate for policies that promote environmental friendly farming methods and eco-friendly packaging solutions. This will safeguard our planet for generations to come. We, the youth, can lead the charge in climate-smart agriculture and eco-friendly innovative solution because we are the torchbearers of sustainability. Finally, engaging us in policy dialogues is important. We are diverse, we have unique experiences and insightful backgrounds, which is necessary to be included in conversations in policy. When we are included in the policy-making dialogues, we make policies attractive, we usually call it sexy, we make it relevant, and we make it impactful. In conclusion, on behalf of youth in agriculture, we ask that we rise above the challenges, cross boundaries, and co-create a food system that stands as a testament to unity, progress, and promotes inclusion. We, the youth, are committed in doing our part to bring on our energies, our innovative ideas, our tech-savvy proclivities. Through partnerships, collaborations, commitments by all stakeholders, Africa's rapidly growing youth population will be able to realize its potential to secure food, create decent jobs, create sustainable livelihoods, boost inclusive economic growth, and a share African prosperity. The time is now to listen to our voice and embrace the power of the African youth. Will you join us in this transformative journey? Thank you.
Sorry? Please stay up. Yeah, just a moment. I don't want her to go because we would like to have a photo session here, at least those speakers that were involved in this session. I'm certainly joining you. I'm sold. I don't know about others in the room, but yes, that was powerful. Thank you so much, Millicent, for that. Let's give her another clap. It gives me a lot of hope that Africa's future is bright, yeah? Yeah, I don't know about you, but certainly for me, if this comes to fruition and with your power and articulation, I think we can make it. I have one logistical announcement, which is that when we break for lunch, which is going to happen very soon, those who are VIPs and the speakers will be going to the 3rd floor. There's limited space there, the 3rd floor here, Zanzibar and Stone Town. And then all other delegates are invited to the tent for lunch, Gymkhana grounds. Please bear that in mind. as soon as we break. Millicent, you want to talk about your product before I invite His Excellency to come and join us for the session? Just 30 seconds, please.
So, as I mentioned, we've been able to add value to the turkey berry crop into 22 lines of products. And this is one of them. The brand is Daliha turkey berry tea. We have them in teas, in juices, in spreads for bread, and in cereal mix powders for adding to your cereals, your smoothies, your breakfast foods. You can also go to Instagram, Daliha Foods, and also our website, achieverfoods.net, to learn more about our impact and the contribution we are making in the food systems. Thank you.